Okay, all right, recording. Second outdoorsy uncomfortable video, except this time we do not have the support of conviction, to use a funny word. It's weird how nerve-wracking it is. You'd think I'd be at least a little bit okay with this. Last time was a special case. It's nerve-wracking getting in front of a microphone with no script, no hard plan. But the way I think we're going to deal with this, it was more part of the vibe last time, but I think smoking actually is a good way to give yourself some of that time and focus to think in between your sentences. When you can't hit pause and think about what you want to say. So, I think this will be, I was planning on this being a, what's it called? A normal life video, but that's not the way things have turned out. So I think we'll call this an order development video and structure it around order development and go with that. That means we can fuck around and talk about whatever without stressing too hard. So, wrapped up in this are a few ideas. Let me get smoking first. Let me think about this. Jesus, it is a completely different experience when you don't have that safety net. The other day when I did my story time video, firstly, I didn't realize I was going to end up getting that drunk. And then when I did, I remember ranting at some people about SOA stuff. And part of that's what I want to talk about today, because I didn't realize I'd been thinking about SOA stuff. So, I think the first thing is no solution, no salvation was a blessing. When I tell you, I think I told you originally, I didn't think of that. I had no solution, and I had no something, but the words were there, and I knew they were there, and I wasn't going to be allowed a slogan until we discovered both of those pre-selected words. And we ended up with no solution, no salvation. And I think that works as a slogan because that is the fulcrum around which everything else operates. Those are the two facts. Whatever this is, and firstly, whatever this is wrong. You can't solve it. You can't fix it. There's no solving life. You'd think with thousands of years of philosophy and shit, I fucking hate philosophers. The answer might be not what we think we could do or what we'll say you should do. It's that maybe there isn't an answer to everything. And not in a nihilistic sense, but there's no... I think the way or the direction most systems of thought go or flow is toward this idea of one totalizing solution that will solve everything. It'll make you happy, or it'll help you deal with the world. By thinking something. And there isn't anything like that. And why things are set up that way is a completely different question. And then the second part is nobody's going to save you. Nobody's coming to help you. Or in other words, nobody else is going to come along and give you the solution. And the first... I was thinking about Wicca, actually. I was watching videos about Wicca. How do you boil... If we have a system of thought, and we do, we're not any better... How do we boil ours down so you don't have books of shadows? You don't have volumes of texts. Something you could fit on a note card. And the first part of that, for us, is understanding those two basic assumptions, or I'd argue facts. You can't fix this, and nobody's going to come help you. So, everything you're doing, everything you're living, it's like I said, a fulcrum around those ideas, because anything else to me is, it's lying, one, and it also feels disrespectful spiritually to our circumstances. If we were supposed to be able to figure things out, then you'd think we would have figured things out by now. If someone were going to come and save us, someone would have come and saved us already. So you're making... Or maybe we are trying to, if not figure out an answer, then we're trying to pin down the rules of the game. These are the rules of the game. So everything you do, you're doing with these ideas in the back of your mind. The rules of the game. And I don't think that's... People like to pick at that and call it nihilistic. I don't think that's the case. It's, again, dedicating yourself to the game as it's intended to be played. Or in other words, everything you're doing you're doing knowing you aren't going to have the answers and you aren't getting out of this. Nowhere in there does that say anything about not doing something. But that leaves us in a tricky spot, because what are you supposed to do if you're not supposed to find the answers? Or try to find the answers? Well, that's where righteousness comes in for us. And maybe we'll call it something else in the future. But for us, righteousness is this idea you know what needs to be done on an instinctive level. The difficulty, same with the difficulty of accepting the rules of the game, is accepting what you know needs to be done in spite of everything. Because righteousness operates in weird ways. Get a little more tobacco. Righteousness operates in weird ways. Because in almost every situation, you'll know on a gut level what needs to happen. Against your more conscious judgment, against what people say, against what you've been taught, against everything, you'll know X is the thing you need to do. Even though it makes no sense, even though it's probably not even going to help you in any way. Not that it always doesn't. Sometimes righteousness helps you, sometimes it doesn't. But you don't matter very much in that equation outside your agency. Outside, something needs to be done, and on an instinctive level, you know you're the one to do it, even if it's small. Check my notes for a second. And that's one of our, I don't know what you'd call it, not our ultimatums, but it seems like when you do the righteous thing, you get some kind of internal payment, even if everything turns out terribly, or what you think is terrible. You know that that was the thing that needed to be done, and you did it. Versus when you go against righteousness, not only do you feel awful, it's always a disaster. Or even if something goes right, and you know you didn't do the righteous thing, you have this feeling looming over your head that you didn't do the righteous thing. And it seems like you pay for that at some point, if not now. And with the fulcrum, with our basic assumptions, no solution, no salvation, why do the righteous thing? I'm not sure. But again, on the internal level, you know that that's what needs to happen. And I view that as another rule of the game. Or maybe the goal is acceptance, but I don't want to stray too far away from that. Let me think. maybe we're looking for, yes, we're looking for purpose. Why are we looking for purpose? Even if we found a purpose, it's not going to solve anything and nobody's going to come save us. We aren't getting a good outcome from this. I don't know. I know that getting yourself to the point you'll do the righteous thing, knowing it's not going to lead to a solution and nobody's going to help you for it. I don't think we're going to get salvation or find salvation doing the righteous thing, but I don't think that should factor into why you're doing what needs to be done. An outcome, I mean. Some positive outcome. You need to get yourself to a point you're dedicated enough to the messages you're receiving, or the orders maybe you're receiving, the directions you're receiving. You're willing to carry them out against everything, knowing you won't benefit from it. That's really important, and I don't know why yet. Next page. Not sure how long this video is going to be. Let's see. Yeah, that's the last note. Conviction is the name of the game. It is. I think that's part of what you're doing, or why we're doing this. It's not we're trying to reach a finish line. We're trying to build up a level of conviction that is unshakable. And not tied in with what people tell you, what you've been taught, or even what you think. You're developing a conviction in what you know. And I don't know why. I don't know what the purpose of that is. It's like an example, not super tied to this, but thought about it earlier. You can almost always smell shit, and even if someone doesn't show you the shit, are you going to let them convince you don't smell shit? Is this recording? Oh God, it's still recording. Okay. All right. Shit metaphors. We'll smoke a little more. Maybe this is also a good exercise, recording like this. I want to be able to do this because I'm afraid if everything falls apart, you need to be able to just talk, communicate your points, and ideally build up your speaking skills, not just your saying words skills, which is what my video making usually is. I go sentence by sentence. Getting in front of a microphone instead and communicating everything you want to communicate, even if it doesn't come out the way you want it to. That's a skill I need to develop. So we skip to the end, but conviction is the name of the game. And that's two other parts of this. Attuning yourself with righteousness. So some freaks turned me on to the phrase, "You'll find the straight path without a book." And one of the reasons I liked them was that's perfect sense. That's what we're talking about. We just weren't able to word it so eloquently. That's what it was. When I wanted to make this video initially, this was going to be the main point, the main thrust. But when you're talking like this, just sitting down talking, you can't, or your mind will wander, but it'll wander in different ways, less structured ways. When you can go sentence by sentence, you can allow ideas in and incorporate them a little better. One of the first instincts I think people have when they're having a problem or they're confused about something, especially if it's some existential shit, you're feeling lost, the instinct is to turn to sage type people. Or, again, these huge volumes of fucking philosophies. And you shouldn't do that. I mean, you can. If you feel that's what you should do it. But those strike me as traps that are going to brainwash you away from yourself, or are going to instill within you mimetic interference that will quiet or dampen your righteousness, your gut voice. So when you're lost, for SOA types, you shouldn't be looking to philosophies or to religions or to any of these other things. You should be trying to key into yourself. We've talked about that before. Engage with media, narrative media. Narratives are very important. Your stories, your TV, your movies, your manga, your anime, all that good stuff. And you're doing this not for media to tell you what to think, which it will try to do, but narratives are a little bit stronger than the people who tell them. You're prompting your inner voice to pipe up. Because your inner voice tells you things. It has opinions. You're watching anime, and you're not just jerking off. You're also trying to get into a conversation with that guiding part of yourself, that society, that you're teaching, that you are trying to drown out most of the time. Shit, I had a point and I lost it, and that's why standard video stuff is important. Video editing is important. But we'll find it again. That's what it is. You're trying to accept what you're telling yourself. The longer video is going to be about how to get into these conversations with yourself, because I think, typologically speaking, my audience, my viewership, we are inclined either not to have those conversations with yourself, as in to get other people to tell you what to think, or you're the sort of person who that interference works on. So either that voice of yours is very, very quiet, or that voice of yours is loud, but other people's voices are even louder. So when you're trying to find the straight path without a book, narrative is important, because that'll prompt yourself to speak up. And part of that process, or I think part of the reason that process is difficult, is your righteousness is almost always nonsensical or apparently nonsensical and very uncomfortable. So what you want to do is use narratives to get your inner voice talking, and then don't shut it up. Write it down if you need to. Write down the weird, uncomfortable shit you're telling yourself. Because I find these messages, it's like if your brain is a web, and I know not everybody's brains operates like webs, but bear with me. And you're filling out this entire lattice yourself, consciousness lattice, or hold on. Fucker. Conscious thinking lattice. What your righteous brain or righteous voice is going to tell you is going to be it's going to feel weird, because these points that you're telling yourself on this level are not going to connect up with your conscious brain at all. And they're going to be really uncomfortable, meaning you're not going to want to connect up anything it tells you with your conscious brain, your web or your lattice. This is weird. It's really uncomfortable. I can see why I tried to use everything, including my willpower, not to think about these things, but you should. And you should not only, well, I find the longer I do this, it's not like I'm getting a look at this other web, and I think there is an entire other web. You're not ever really getting a great look at it, although you can sense it's there. I don't know what it is. Usually, if you think about what you're telling yourself, it'll prompt you into hidden corners of your conscious mind that will be useful to you. So, you take something really uncomfortable that you tell yourself, and that makes no sense. It's uncomfortable. You don't want to think about it, but you do anyway. And even if that point, as you received it from yourself, doesn't make sense, it will illuminate some things you weren't thinking about or some connections you hadn't made yet. Or more likely, you had made them, but you weren't thinking about them or you didn't want to think about them. And that'll start getting you in touch with the real you. Because as highly as we value ego and image, as highly as I value ego and self-image, the ego you work on like a hobby car is nothing like the actual you, or the grander ego. The system, maybe. The other parts of yourself with voices, we talk about that in relation to the shadow pretty often. But again, you'll start getting in touch with the person you actually are. And what you actually are is really uncomfortable. It's scary, but that can be a good thing. But again, why are we doing this? Why are we even bothering to try to connect with our true selves, which are there, they're always operating, or it's always operating, even if your awareness of your ego doesn't encompass all of your ego, or encompass all that could be your ego. Why? Again, I don't know. I have no idea. I know there's a feeling. It's the same feeling you get when you do the righteous thing. That gives you some kind of positive feeling, or if not positive feeling the way we conceive of positive, the feeling that was a mission accomplished. Getting a better sense of yourself by listening to that voice and working with the information it gives you that exact same feeling. So that makes me think that's another thing we should be doing. It also makes that righteousness sense a little bit keener. And maybe what you're doing is you're training yourself. It all comes back to conviction. You're training yourself to have conviction in things you know, but don't think or don't feel or don't know. You know them, but you don't know them. You don't want to know them. You're developing the conviction in whatever this other sense is. And again, I don't know why, but that feels like what we're supposed to be doing. And when you do this, when you get in touch with this inner voice, that righteousness becomes more active, you can hear it clearer, and the more you take those actions, the more you develop that conviction, the more you listen to that voice, the more you develop that conviction. It's all a conviction building game. To what end? No idea. And that's stripping it down even away from the Venus shit. The serving your God shit. That goes deeper than that. I can be talked out of the idea that we're doing this to serve some entity. Part of me believes that. Part of me thinks that's not connected to what we're doing. But developing this conviction is connected to the essential. And that's why our beliefs change so much. It's not really the beliefs that are changing, they are the facades dressing up the essentials. The essentials being no solution, no salvation. You'll find the straight path without a book. And be righteous. And there is also a drive to share these ideas with people. But it's not, we're going off the books, by the way. It's not in a proselytizing sort of way. Because I don't care, one, if Joe Dipshit believes any of this. And more, I don't want Joe Dipshit to know any of this. Is this still going? Still going, okay. I don't want people who shouldn't be here to be here, and I don't want people whose soil isn't tilled enough to be here. Probably because they introduce interference. Because to me, this stuff is the self-evident stuff, which self-evident shit is very rare, hard to find. What we're talking about today are the few things that you don't need to, learn about or to meditate on or to initiate oneself into. They're already there. It's not a matter of finding them or understanding them or accepting them. It's all a matter of accepting what's already in front of you. And if someone can't accept what's in front of them, or isn't at a point they want to try to accept what's in front of them, I don't want anything to do with them. But there is a definite building aspect to this, even within those conditions, which are restrictive. It feels important to share these ideas with people who are already in them. And what is the Alan Watts, two thieves know each other at first glance, something like that? When you meet people who are already in this, it's all my videos are under the educate or not under, they're under the entertainment category, not the education category. Because when you encounter people who are already here, it's not like you're teaching them like a shepherd with a flock. That's not at all the case. It's like you're born with a tattoo that imposes any number of conditions on your life, or talks to you, and then you find somebody else with the exact same tattoo. There's not any teaching there. You cunt, acting like you're teaching somebody. It enters a matter of coordination, both on the material and on the mining for other self-evidences, pieces of self-evidence. Because that you won't find them in a book. People aren't writing about them. Well, maybe somebody has, but if it's in one of these larger systems, it's a coincidence. Because people act like religions are all aiming toward the same thing. I don't think so. Religions strike me as all drawing from different sources that are trying to fuck up their ability to understand themselves. So you meet these people who are already self-initiated into whatever this is, into playing the game. And you work together to find other fundamental parts of the game. And then there's also the, as I was saying, building on the material level. There's a definite urge, like one of those ants with the the cordyceps climbing up high. There's an urge to try to organize. As in, if my channel disappeared tomorrow and all my efforts went up in flames, and I had to do it all, start completely from scratch, and do it all for free, I think I'd still be doing it, even if I'd be pissy about it. Because it doesn't feel like there's a choice there. Organizing is what you need to do. Organizing with people who are on this level, at this stage of acceptance. Or at this level of self-communication. Because it doesn't feel like self-communication necessarily. But that's all fine for the abstract side. The searching side, why the material side? Why is it necessary to want a compound or a town to have influence? To organize one's life around this search for the basic rules of the game. I mean, there's the definite human side of it, the wanting power, the wanting the money, the wanting the purpose, the wanting the solution and the salvation. But if you're organizing under the assumptions that no material organizing will reach either of those things, then what purpose does that serve? I still strongly suspect, or maybe not strongly suspect, I still suspect part of what we're doing in this life is gearing up for the next one. gearing up for some roles or something. But you're operating basically with the assumption that's not the case, because I don't think there's a heaven for us. I don't think anything good, if there is something next, I don't think it's going to be anything good. So why all this material shit? Why all the focus on the material shit? Because if it were just some Matrix stuff or Gnostic stuff, the goal would strictly be to get out of this plane, but that doesn't feel like what we're here to do. It feels like we have been placed here to learn to do things. To learn to do things the material world will teach us, like Lorcan in the Elder Scrolls. Kirkbride is... I need to do a lot more reading on him because I think he's a saint. I think he should be, but I just don't know enough about him. We were given limitation to complete the Psijic endeavor. But I don't get any sense that wherever we're going, if we are going anywhere, is going to be good. But you think about it, you're developing conviction, you're developing organizational strategies, you're learning to trust voices connected with nothing on the material level, voices against all sense. I don't know what this all is. Let me think. I was going to ramble a little while longer, but I think that about covers everything. So, quick summary. No solution, no salvation. Those are the two basic fundamentals. Those are the fulcrum. Everything you do and you should be doing, you do understanding that on this level you will not solve anything and nobody will come to save you. What you're doing, you are not doing for a positive outcome. You're doing them because they need to be done. How do you know what needs to be done? Righteousness. How do you get in touch with righteousness? Righteousness being the internal sense of what needs to be done against every bit of sense or learning or whatever else. You engage with media, you engage with narratives, you get that inner voice to pipe up, and maybe you do that also by engaging with the material world in other ways, substances or nature, if that's your game. You get that inner voice to start yapping, and instead of shutting it out, you listen to it. Your brain operates like one lattice. This thing will give you information from a different lattice that you don't have access to, but you know is part of you, or at least you're connected to in some way. Really weird, really uncomfortable, doesn't link up at first with anything you think about or think you should think about. You entertain those thoughts and think about them. Let them lead you to the parts of yourself you're hiding or you're afraid of or that are so uncomfortable you can't speak about them. Accept them, that's another thing, accepting them. Then the more you do this, the more you develop your ability or your will to listen to righteousness. You start doing righteous things, things you know need to be done, in spite of everything, in spite of outcomes, in spite of sense. And then you build up that conviction, and that's another point about conviction, is I don't think you would build that conviction if you weren't proven right when you do the righteous thing. And sometimes you have to look for it, and it doesn't always happen, but once you develop that righteousness schnoz and you can smell the shit, you know there's shit there, and sometimes you will find the shit. Sometimes it'll roll out, or people will show it to you accidentally, and you'll be justified. You were right to listen to that sense, because that sense is usually right. It's always right once you've got the sense for it. You just won't always be proven right in a way you'll find satisfying. But you'll be proven right enough, you'll develop that conviction. And that's what you're building toward, that conviction. Then the organizing, trying to link up with other people who are willing to accept these really uncomfortable or scary things about life as much as anyone on this plane can. You work with them to find other fundamental truths, rules of the way this game is played. You play the game, and you do on the material realm what you need to do on the material realm, whatever that might be. Maybe to learn skills you'll need in the next life. Probably not. Maybe not. I don't know. That sense is harder to shake than the other ones. That on some level that we cannot understand, even if it doesn't serve us in any way, I don't think we would have these instincts and this much shit trying to separate us from them if there weren't some reason, even if we never figure it out, even if it doesn't benefit us. Not that anything in this plane other than what we're talking about will benefit you, because it won't. It's all about conviction. And I think we'll cut it here. Let's see how long that was. That was a little rambly, but we're good. We're good. All right, we're good.